to your Bournemouth accommodation.
Yeah.
Where did you live in your first year?
So I lived in Cranborne House in my first year.
And what was it like living at Cranborne House?
um, I can't remember if it was the cheapest accommodation, but it wasn't the best, is what I can tell you. It was interesting. It it by far was sort of lacking in lots of areas, and we sort of grew it. We grew to sort of describe it, like this is a sort of a dump, but it's my dump. It like so it kind of
defending where you live.
Yeah, it's weird. You sort of it was this love-hate thing. Like, yeah, this is where I live, and it's bad. And it's like I like bragging about it's bad. And actually, over the last couple of years, Bournemouth has built. It's almost doubled its quantity of accommodation. So a lot of the giant tower blocks that you'd see just that now dominate the Bournemouth skyline didn't exist when I first came. And so there was sort of like one brand new one, but even that one at Home Park has its flaws. And so interestingly, every accommodation had something off with it, some more than others. But no, it's like I say, like in terms of my one specifically in Cranborne, it was just pretty tired as an accommodation. It hadn't seen an update in quite a while, was the main problem.
What kind of vibe was Cranborne? Is it the party house? If we put it on a spectrum from party to very calm, so not as many parties, just in your room with your flatmates, where would you put it on the spectrum?
It was party. It wasn't. There were others which I think were slightly more partier, but Cranborne was definitely up there as a fun place for a first year. That's fantastic, because that's the time when you can go out and party the most, and it's not so detrimental on your studies. And so, like all the accommodations and their position next to all the clubs and stuff, the party aspect was brilliant, and there was always something going on, and you could always hear a prees or a party happening in sort of one of the wings of that sort of U-shape accommodation, and I loved that. And I mean, one of the good things was because they were a little bit hands off with sort of the accommodation stuff. It meant that you could do prees and you could do partying without really any noise complaints. Bit of freedom, yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
So where did you live in your second year?
Second year, I did like most second years, and I moved to Winton. So,
and what was it like going from Cranborne to Winton?
A lot different, because suddenly you were from this sort of accommodation, which was this weird, fun party bubble world, into a house. I was on one of sort of the main roads in Winton that you get students living. I think my road supposedly had 70% of student houses. You still had prees, you still went clubbing, you had to get a taxi, of course, and that was when you saw sort of a shift from clubbing to work really change. But there were just sort of other general things like, oh yeah, now you've got to work out bills and heating and manage that, whereas in first year didn't have to worry about that. Bins was a bit more, because it's like, oh no, okay, they only collect bins on a certain day, you couldn't just take it to a giant dump bin in the courtyard kind of thing. And so that was sort of that next shift of, oh, now you're learning to live by yourself and come into your own, and moving into a house is part of that natural progression.
What advice would you give to students going from first year to second year, moving into a house?
It's quite hard to organize, but because you have to pick who you with really early on, because houses do start going. Make sure you really do want to live with the people that you're choosing, because sometimes if you pick people who maybe you just fall out with, or people who are just not so similar to you, or even if someone who has like completely different hygiene qualities to you kind of thing, that can sometimes cause like a bit of a problem. But as I said, like mainly just it's good to live with course mates, I think is a good piece of advice, because then at least you all understand where everyone else is at. You know each other's deadlines, and in fact in final year that's exactly what I'm doing, is living with course mates.
So obviously on your third year you went in your placement.
Third year, yeah, because third year is interesting. Most of the people I knew also had placements, so it's like everyone sort of split up and went all over the country or further. And so I managed to get a placement during my second year, secure that, and then very quickly find a flat. And I lived not too far from Bournemouth. And so I spent my third year living on my own, That was another sort of progression because it was great for some parts, but not for others. There were some times where it's like because you were working in general, you weekends was really only your free time, and if you were seeing friends every weekend, I remember they got to a point it's like I haven't had a free weekend just to myself for downtime because unlike uni, whereas you're going back and forth to campus and you can have an hour gap in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. It was like no, only weekends are free. Um, that was it was great though living on your own because you're the only thing you have to worry about.
We're going to your final year. Where are you
Yeah,
living now?
final year I'm living stone's throw from university, which was the plan before the pandemic because we could skip across to uni, but now we're sort of being taunted by it because we can see it but we can't quite go there. So currently I'm living in a house with mainly people in my course, which is a fantastic shift because as I said, you understand where everyone's deadlines are. Oh, and you can help each other out, which is really, really useful. Um, we also, when you get to final year, you learn the lay of the land for like searching for houses. You search early, you find one you really like. You're not hopefully running around. Um, yeah, it's this last year is fantastic in terms of living. It's the best place.
What do you think the best Bournemouth accommodation is for first years?
From the ones that I've seen, um, Oxford Point looks pretty impressive.
Okay.
But then there's also, is it Bellaton House and Bailey Point?
Mm.
I honestly, I would say it's the newer ones, the newer ones purely because they are now more up to date. They're better.
Okay.
And these newer accommodations, I know, also have more features in them. I think Oxford Point had something like every room they had a common room, and sometimes sorry, every floor had a common room, and sometimes one floor would have it'll be a makeup room, and the other one would be a games room, and it would be just a small room dedicated for that. But it was just such a difference.
Okay.
There is another crazy accommodation I have to mention, which is called the Skyline.
Mm.
That's private halls, quite expensive, but that was something where it had just insane extra facilities.
Mm.
Yeah.
If we now go